Hello, folks. I'm Josh Collins. I'm coming to you from Union City, Tennessee. I am a member of Grace Presbyterian Church in Troy, Tennessee, just a little ways down the road from where I live. Is a PCA church, Presbyterian Church in America denomination church, and I come at you from the Reformed faith. Our church subscribes to the Westminster Confession of the 1640s, and we do believe that is the best interpretation of the Bible since the time of the apostles. I invite you to listen. I invite you to call in. I have the telephone number you can call in, and I'll just put you on speakerphone if you call in. It's 731-599-9504. It's 731-599-9504. Anybody who perhaps is listening live can call in and contribute to the show, or your comments, questions, and I do not mind interacting with hostile individuals who would maybe think I'm teaching a lie, error, and falsehood, and whatever. I've been going through the book of Genesis. The few listeners that I might have, just if you're listening to this one, I got several more before this particular show, going back to all the way back to Genesis chapter 1. I'm basically laying a foundation of God's Word for people to look at and study and investigate further. This is definitely not a full-on exposition of any of these chapters. This is more of a overview and maybe hitting some highlights of some issues here and there. I do recommend people to look at John Calvin's commentaries over these books. Matthew Henry recommends you to go to Presbyterian Church in America's website to look for more resources on exposition of the Scripture. And I do appreciate everybody who is listening now or may listen sometime in the future. Remember, my show is Mondays at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you live in another time zone, Eastern, Mountain, or Pacific Time, just take that in mind. It's Mondays at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're listening in other parts of the country or internationally or whatever, just take that into account. Particularly if you're going to listen live and maybe call in. We'll go ahead and get started in the lesson. This is over Genesis chapter 11. Let's see here. I do not subscribe to the notion that there will be a one-world government. However, those so-called fundamentalists that do, I see how they draw from this text their contentions. However, I think that this might prove that there will be no evil one world government, because essentially the power of God has separated these people, and they are kept separated even to this day. They are not pulled back into there won't be, there may not be any unifying force. There are antichrists and stuff. They're mentioned even in the New Testament, but I'm not sure if the interpretation that many fundamentalists hold to really reflect what the Bible's really saying in these regards. The unity of humanity was exhibited under the apostles' ministry in the miracle of speaking in languages not learned in the normal way on Pentecost and after Pentecost. My experience of dealing with those who do not know my language well, and I am not knowing their language well, proves to me the reality of Genesis chapter 11. Language is the thing that makes human interaction both binding and deep. However, if you cannot understand each other's language, because of language differences, we separate from each other. It is as if we have to have close, intimate interaction, or we do not interact. Mankind, with eternity in their heart, mankind acts with eternity in their hearts. Language is central to the actions in this world. Mankind are all wordsmiths by their very nature. Mankind are artists with words. Mankind are professional musicians with words, with their words. Mankind in general are skilled surgeons with words. So all these realities are exhibited in this chapter. In our day, we see the use of language as a means of great advancement and success in this world. With things such as the internet, I do not know how mankind is not like this chapter's scene. Except one thing, we as mankind do not have a unified language. Yes, English is a predominant language in the Western civilization. That is in the Western civilization. The internet does not unify the world like one language does. Only language can unify the world. Yes, the internet makes everything much closer. Even if one is much closer does not mean we unify. We can unify. Can we unify if we do not understand one another? If we cannot understand each other on a very deep level, mankind will not unify. However, language connection will not be sufficient. It is simply the tool used to reach the true unity. The real unity is found in God's revelation. Rejection of God's revelation leaves mankind to disunity. The sin of these ancestors of ours is ignoring God's guidance and covenant. Language is the major tool that is used for God to fulfill His purposes. God will fulfill His purposes despite whatever man is doing. God commanded man to spread across the earth. Man disobeyed that command. God will have His way whether man cooperates with His intention or not. Disobedience is no hindrance to God for His purposes. The Bible is full of all kinds of disobedience. Either God bulldozes through to fulfill His purposes, or purposes sin to fulfill God's purposes. God does bulldozing action for the purpose of showing to mankind how much more powerful He is compared to man's power in this world. He purposes rebellious actions to show that He is in control of the universe. Those who think that some way man will thwart God's purposes have not grasped reality. Man may be shocked at what occurs with God's will and power. Man's shock does not move God against God's own purposes. How shocking is it for those who are in hell? Their tears will forever flow in their eternally damned state. It does not move the Lord against his purposes. God so easily confused the language of the people. The cries afterward did not move the Lord. Man's purposes and God's purpose are at odds, but God's purposes will prevail over man's purposes. We see the genealogy that leads to the existence of Abraham, later called Abraham. God is for the process of redemption. Christ could have come into the Garden of Eden and laid down his life to save sinners in the Garden of Eden. But this exquisite elaboration that truly glorifies God from its details. How can I express in mere words this grand presentation of covenant redemption? Since we are just in Genesis, we are scratching the surface of this grand design of redemption. Redemption is layered with one layer after another of connective revelation. All of it ties together into this most beautiful canvas. A canvas of extreme radiant beauty. It is the most attractive art that has ever been made. Now, let me read through the chapter and I might make a few more comments and we will. Okay, here we go. Now, the whole earth had one language with the same words. And as people migrated from east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had a brick for stone, bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. This is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. These are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after, and he fathered Arpachshad 500 years, and he had other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah. Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years and had sons and daughters. Shelah lived 30 years and he fathered Eber. Shelah lived after he fathered Eber 403 years and had sons and daughters. When Eber lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And Eber lived after he fathered Peleg 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg lived 30 years, he fathered Rehu. Peleg lived after he fathered Rehu 209 years and had sons and daughters. And Rehu lived 32 years and fathered Shirag. And Rehu lived after he fathered Shirag 207 years and had sons and daughters. When Sirag lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor, and Sirag lived after he fathered 200 years and had sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years and he fathered Terah, and Nahor lived and he fathered Terah 119 years and had sons and daughters. And when Terah lived 70 years, he fathered Aram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah lived and fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of Father Terah in the land of his kindred in the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives, and the name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Michal, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Michal and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren, and she had no child. Terah took Abram, his sons, and Lot, his son of Aaron, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. And when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Well, is a detailed story of the genealogy here. We see that this is a close-knit family between Abram, Lot, and Sarai. We see that they are very important to the story of redemption. They are singled out in this story. We see again there are many other people mentioned in passing, sons and daughters being born. Their particular lives are set in the background, and the main actors, if you can call them that, come forth as we see Abram, Lot, and Sarai are being brought forth, or being brought out of the group of humanity, and they are going to be, if we could divide the book of Genesis into different acts of a play, what we would have is, the first few chapters is the first act. The first set of, I don't know, the first act would probably actually be all the way up to about where we're at now. To this point, it is almost has, the book of Genesis has been it's almost been a preface to this story that's coming up. It's almost, God is saying we have to cover all this background information to get to where we're at now. It's sort of like Star Wars and the Rolling Scroll. It's you see this upcoming information. You see the context in which the rest of the movie or play, the rest of the show is going to occur in, and that's where we're at right now. We are in the point where the main thing is starting to occur. The main here we go. Here's what we've been leading up to. So this is really the what we've been going through is just, it's almost just background information, because Noah's story could have been a lot more elaborate in a lot of ways. Adam and Eve's story could have been a lot more elaborate. Seth's story, it's just like we're just covering this dot dot. Now Noah's story gets a little bit more elaborate, but it's still almost just kind of background information. It's getting to what is important in the story. This is the end of the scroll. The scrolling. It's setting the context of the book of Genesis. Before the without this coming up to this, you don't know the context in which why are we talking about Abraham? Why are we talking about Sarah? Where'd they come from? Where did they whatever. That's basically the first 11 chapters of Genesis. Really, if you think about it, the book of Genesis is about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The first 11 chapters have been more about covering what we needed to cover about our past. Those things are important. Don't get me wrong, those things are extremely important. But when we set the stage for the story of Genesis, we're just having a very long introduction to the main plot line now. This is the plot about Abraham, Sarah, about Isaac and Jacob, and then finally Joseph. We've come to the, you could say the first scene in the movie. The first, we have Luke at Tatooine with his uncle and aunt scene. That's what we got here. So I want to emphasize that we have come to the point, to the essence of what the book of Genesis was trying to get to. The preface information, the introduction, whatever you want to call it, is very important. Don't misunderstand me. But it's the background information for this book. But it doesn't flow without the background information. Now, it could have started with chapter 12. But we'd be asking, where'd they come from? What happened before this? Well, God has given us the before this information. So I just want to say we're coming into the first scene of if you can say, the movie of Genesis. Everything else has been background information. We've come into the first scene when we go to Genesis chapter 12. So, if anybody wants to call in, the number is 731-599-9504. Mondays at 6:30 Central Standard Time. If you find you're living in California, and you find us, that would be 6:30. It'd be 5:30. It'd be 4:30 in California. If you're in North Carolina or Maine or Florida, that would be 7:30 your time. If you're in Salt Lake City or Phoenix, Arizona, or somewhere near there or whatever, that would be, if I'm getting this right, 5:30 your time. Mondays, but 6:30 Central Standard Time. So, just to spread this and tell people about what I'm trying to do here, I invite questions, comments, debate into the show. I want this to grow and tell people even if you disagree, tell people about this. At least people you respect within your denomination or whatever in your church, and get them to chime in. Maybe they can correct me. Or whatever. I'll be glad to interact with anybody. So, I think I about got my timing just about right. And I appreciate y'all listening. And I will talk to you next Monday at 6:30 Central Standard Time. And anybody can listen to it any other time, but if you want to call in during that time. Mondays at 6:30 Central Standard Time. Okay, thank you.